Georgia Republic is a country located on the border of Europe and the Middle East. Political turmoil has plagued Georgia longer than any records indicate. These issues have largely contributed to sex, race, and gender issues that surround hunger and poverty. Georgia's history is heavily marked with invasions, political conflicts, and wars, with few years of peace in between. Despite political issues being a public knowledge, Georgia has been successful at keeping their statistics a secret. Any records containing sensitive data were sealed to protect the country's pride and hide its corruption. In 1917, the Russian Revolution resulted in the collapse of the Russian Empire. And in 1918, Georgia became known as the Democratic Republic of Georgia and was declared an independent country. On this day, Georgia publicly declared that the Democratic Republic of Georgia equally guarantees to every citizen within her limits political rights irrespective of nationality, creed, social rank, or sex. 3 years later, in 1921, Georgia's independence was seized. They were attacked and defeated by the Russian Red Army and thus surrendered control to Russia. The Russian Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, also known as the USSR, remained in control from 1921 until 1991. This is when the USSR lost power and any Russian influence fled the country. Georgia then reclaimed their independence and celebrated. The independence didn't bring Georgia the happiness they hoped for. Having lost a steady government so abruptly, Georgia was facing a severe economic collapse. In 1995, Georgia thankfully accepted grants from outside countries wanting to help them rebuild their economy. The World Bank granted Georgia $206 million and Germany granted them 52 million DM. The grants helped significantly, and Georgia's GDP growth rate reached 12% in just 2 years. The population in Georgia almost doubled, from 3 million in 1920 to 5.5 million in 1992. But then the population dropped to 4.5 million in 2005 with the loss of the USSR and their Russian citizens. Georgians exceed 80% of the ethnic population in Georgia, leaving only a small 20% being shared with the other ethnic groups. The economic crisis also fueled the loss of electricity and gas for heat and light. Some parts of the country have now been in the dark for a decade. Also, when the economy collapsed, Georgia lost their social safety net, and many families have suffered immensely because of this. Poverty sank in deep, and in order to save their children, some parents gave them up for adoption and others sent them to the streets to beg. With the economy collapse came an increase in unemployment, and many people that used to live in prosperity are now facing poverty. 50% of the population dropped below the poverty line. Key government functions became too difficult to maintain, and as a result, healthcare and education systems have deteriorated. Single mothers proved to be more vulnerable to poverty. Any previous gender social gains were eroded with the economy collapse, and working women are paid significantly less than men. Only 1.9 out of 4.5 million people are employed, 17% are unemployed, 31% are living below the poverty line. The labor force is 55% agriculture business, and 35% services, and 10% industries. Agribusiness doesn't always pay off. Georgia spends $4.8 million on imported goods per year, and they only make $2.29 million on their exported goods. Conditions worsened in 2008 when border clashes between Georgia and South Ossetia became a war between Georgia and Russia. Russia defeated Georgia, and with the defeat, Georgia lost their food market hosted by Russia. Russia refuses to mend ties with Georgia. They accuse Georgia of having started the conflict that turned into a war. And in response to losing the food market, the citizens of Georgia are ushering for the current president to step down.